morning, good morning. Good morning. Ooh, wow. Good morning, everyone. I think we need, oops. Well, it's nice to be able to say good morning to start. Everything's working on time today, that's fantastic. It's great to be back on our final health talk. We've been looking at some very interesting topics, and as you can see, actually, there's a display there that talks about a health fest, the health fest that we're going to be doing on the 27th and the 28th of August. I invite you all to come. It's going to be at the Troxy in East London, and we're going to try and make an impact for health for London. But we need your help. It's going to be an interesting day, lots of displays, lots of advice, also a wonderful performance done by fantastic actors and musicians. So I would invite you to invite your friends. It will be absolutely a spectacular day. Please come along. We've been talking really about some of the topics that are close to my heart. I often talk about health through the prism of life colors. Life colors, each color represents a different disease. But sometimes people ask me, what is the point? Why do you talk so much about prevention of disease? Well, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. And it's not just important for the individual. What we always have to remember is that one man's health doesn't just affect the individual. It affects the community. It affects the nation. It affects the world. Each individual's health. Some people say to me, you know what? I understand what you're saying, Dr. Chidi, but you know what? It's my life. I'll do whatever I want to do. And then I ask myself, well, you know what? If I get sick, who's the one going to be taking me to the hospital? Is it not going to affect my family? We can't just be so selfish as to think it's just down to me. What happens to me affects everyone around me. And you know what? Talking about the world, health is a big issue for the world today. We know that lifestyle diseases alone are incredibly expensive globally. Today, it's costing round about $40 trillion a year to deal with. $40 trillion. Have a look at the world. This is a map of the world which talks about how diabetes is really getting a grip all over the world. Where you see the darkest places is where you see the most amounts of diabetes. That was in 2000, that's 2010. By 2030, it will look slightly different. Diabetes is rapidly encapsulating the entire planet. And we know the ways to reverse it, and we know the ways to prevent it. It's lifestyle. It has to be our lifestyle. We need to eat enough vegetables. Most of us are not doing that. We need to eat fruit. We need to exercise. We need to make sure we maintain a healthy weight. Most of us, the majority of us in Britain today, are overweight. Even those of us who look quite slim are overweight. Every time I do a talk which is about obesity or weight loss, often people who are quite slim, they say, I don't need to hear any of this. I'm doing all right. But many of us, and I'm including myself in this, many of us, even though we look slim, we have so much fat on the inside. We call that visceral fat. It's surrounding our heart, our kidneys, our liver. So we can't just say, oh no, it's not for me. We have to actually take advice and lower the amount of fat in our diet. Look what's happening globally. This is what is costing us throughout the earth. Cancer, nearly $1 trillion. Just alone, cancer. Heart disease, cardiovascular disease. All of these diseases are incredibly expensive. And unless we do something about it, it will cripple our country's NHS, It will cripple health services all the way around the world. And the interesting thing is that lifestyle methods are incredibly cheap. I don't know if you heard about some treatment today. If you have multiple sclerosis, there's some treatment that's just been discovered whereby they can destroy all of your antibodies, give you some chemotherapy, destroy all of your antibodies, and replace those with new antibodies made from your stem cells. Actually, it's a wonderful treatment. It's amazing. That gives hope to people who have multiple sclerosis. But we know that we can stop multiple sclerosis with lifestyle change as well. Much cheaper. And as we've been talking about heart disease and other things, we know that just by adjusting your diet and lifestyle, you can have an impact all over your body. If you remain physically active, it gets rid of fat cells. It gets rid of the amount of insulin that is circulating in our body. The more insulin that's actually circulating in your body, the greater your risk of cancer. Did you know that? The more insulin we have, because insulin just tells every cell to grow more. So just by exercising, you're not just losing weight, you're lowering your risk of cancer. The way we think, the things we think about, actually improves our immune system. If you're happy, if you're joyful, your immune cells actually start to pucker up. You know, laughter is very, very good medicine. But look, it takes a big jigsaw of things to make us healthy. It's the environment, it's our psychology, it's our nutrition, it's our activity. They all have to come together to make us healthy. It's important that we do all of these things. We need to move more. We need to eat well. We need to connect. We need to interact with each other, love, connect, have friendships, and make sure we take time to relax. There is one thing that most of us don't do enough of, that is relax. You come to camp meeting. I see people coming to camp meeting and they all look stressed. What are you stressed? I thought it was camp meeting. This is a holiday. But we always find something to be stressed about. It's amazing. And it's because of that stress that leads to things like disease. None of us want to have disease. But if we use the right building blocks, we can avoid it, okay? And let's just look at some ways that we can reverse the disease of man. And we look at life colors to help us do that. Right, let's just start with the diet. You know about the Western diet, right? The Western diet, high in sugar, high in salt, protein, fat, low in nutrients, low in fiber. That's one of the things that is killing us. And that actually is being exported all over the world. We call it a Western diet now, but actually it's going all over the world. You go to India, you go to Africa, all over the world, they're adopting the Western diet. Sometimes I call it the mark of the feast. Yeah, the mark of the feast. And one of the big proponents of the mark of the feast is all of this meat, all this red meat, all this processed meat. It seems that the wealthier a country gets, the more meat they tend to eat. And then the bigger they tend to get, and the higher their blood pressure and everything like that. But often people will say to me, okay, Chidi, if I can't eat this and I can't eat that, what can I eat? What can I eat? You know, there's something starting today, right? The European football championships. Did you know about that? Oh, all the women are saying yes. Okay, fair enough. That's great. Fabulous, fabulous. You know, I like sport. I think, you know, football's a little bit boring for me. I like sport. I prefer the Olympics. The Olympics is coming up this year as well. Fantastic. And when I think about the Olympics, I think about those colored rings. And those colored rings, to me, represent, obviously they represent all the different nations. And it reminds me, actually, our foods and the different colored foods and how they can help us. And when I think about the Olympics, you know, when the Rio Olympics comes along, different countries will specialize and win different medals. I mean, the Jamaicans will probably dominate the sprints, right? The Kenyans will probably dominate the middle distance running. The Australians will probably dominate all the swimming. and the British will attend the Olympics. The Olympics. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say. No, we've got some good athletes. We've got some good athletes. No, look, you know. Yeah, you know, Jessica Ennis, all those people. We've got one or two, but we don't dominate, do we? We don't dominate. But when I think about those colors and I think about the different specialities of athletes and how good they do, I always think to myself, it is a bit like the different specialities of food, the different colors of food, and how they can affect us. So, for example, how a plant-based diet can prevent cancer. Let's look at the red. The red. So when you have foods, fruits, vegetables that are rich in red color, most of them have a substance called lycopene. Lycopene is a fantastic chemical that can prevent cancer, especially for men, prostate cancer. So tomatoes, all of these red-colored fruits or vegetables, they actively can promote your activity to suppress any kind of prostate cancer. By the way, prostate cancer is one of the few cancers that has been proved that if you have an early diagnosis of prostate cancer, and I mean a very early diagnosis of prostate cancer, by changing your diet, you can actually shrink that cancer, okay? There's been lots of studies. If you look up a study done in the University of California, San Francisco, they actually demonstrated whereby people have an early diagnosis of cancer, and by changing their lifestyle, changing their diet, that cancer can start to shrink. That's the only one that we've seen so far. So red is very important. What about orange? What about orange? Orange, beta-carotene, boosts the immune system. Boosts the immune system. Your immune system, as we've said before, is like your fighter pilots. They're out looking for anything that is wrong, and they destroy it. The more things with orange in it, the more your immunity gets boosted. Yellow and orange is pretty much the same. So if you have tumors in your body, and we've said we all get these tumors, we all get little cancers, well, it boosts the immune system to go seek out and destroy those weird cells before they cause you any problems. Green, folic acid. Somebody was asking me about folic acid yesterday, and you know, when women are pregnant, we're always told to put them on folic acid, right? But actually, dark green vegetables, dark green fruits have high concentrations of folic acid. So sometimes you can actually get better quality folic acid from this fruit, from these vegetables, rather than taking it from supplements. Now, I'm not telling you not to take it, but I don't recommend taking it. And the reason why I don't recommend it is because if you look up one of the side effects of folic acid, it actually can promote cancers within you. So if you're taking supplements, it can actually promote cancer. So you shouldn't take too much of it. So that's green. What about white? Onions and garlic. Another thing, it boosts immunity. But you know, onions and garlic do many, many good things. They almost act like a disinfectant in your body as well. There are certain people who will, if you have a wound that is infected and you put a poultice on it, a garlic onion poultice on it, it can actually help to get rid of the infection. If people have problems with their heart and they want to thin their blood, garlic, onions, lemon, lime, they all act to thin the blood as well. How about the blues and the blacks, these? Now, you hear about this. You hear people say, oh, you know, if you drink a glass of red wine every day, it will lower your blood pressure and you know, all that nonsense. It's probably promoted by the alcohol industry anyway, right? It's all nonsense. But there are some good aspects to red wine, and everything that's good in red wine you find in the red grapes. You don't need to take the alcohol. The alcohol is the poison. Okay, so you just need to take the skin of the red grapes. That has so many things that are good for you. What about the browns? The browns, the whole grains. Whole grains. I always tell people, avoid all of the refined carbohydrates, the white rice, the white pasta. All of those things are high in sugar. Have them whole grains. I actually think whole grain rice tastes a lot better than white rice. You know, if you're a diabetic, by the way, and you're eating white rice, you're just eating a spoonful of sugar every time. You should really avoid it. Just take whole grain rice. So that's something to do with the food. What about exercise? We spoke a little bit about exercise the other day, but I always go back to exercise because I think it's around about exam time now, and when it's around about exam time, I always remember my physics O-levels. My physics O-levels, and Isaac Newton had his laws of motion, and one of them, the second law of motion, says a body in motion tends to stay in motion, and a body at rest tends to stay at rest. And that's like all of us. If you rest all the time, if you sit down in the couch watching TV all the time, you don't want to get up. If somebody says to you, okay, let's go for a walk, let's go for a run, if you're used to sitting down all day, you don't want to move. Let's be honest. And so you think, oh, I'm going to get sore, I'm going to be tired, I'm going to start sweating. But what you have to do is just get over that inertia and just take the step out. The more you do it, the more you'll want to do it. A body in motion wants to stay in motion. So get up, take the dog for a walk, okay? Take the dog for a walk. Remember, because it's so important that we exercise. Obviously, this is from America, obviously. We don't do that in England, But just remember, you can't get to the top by sitting on your bottom, okay? You can't get to the top by sitting on your bottom. You know, exercise is also a very good appetite suppressant. Did you know that? It's a fantastic appetite suppressant. You have never seen a person running eating a pizza. It just doesn't happen, you know? Whilst you're exercising, you have to stop eating, right? You have to be active. And you tend to find, when you go and exercise, yes, you get hungry at the end of the day, but you tend to find that you want to eat the right type of food. If you've gone for a run and you felt the pain, the next time you look at that cream cake, you think, oh, that's the cause of my problems. You tend then to look for things that are actually better for you. So diet is very important. Exercise is absolutely valuable to us. But then also we have to think about what we think about. And I think at the root of what many of us think about is this word, fear. We're all carrying these fears. Okay. You know, I never understand why people go and watch a film, you know, those horror films. Because, look, if you're watching a horror film, I would spend most of it looking away. Because there's always something coming up. I don't know why you would pay money and go to the cinema to watch a film that is going to frighten you. I just don't understand that at all. But it does remind me that most of us are carrying fears, concerns, and worries. Most of us today. Even though we're at camp meeting, most of us have these problems. And I always like to ask, what are we actually worried about? Well, Dr. Calvert, he did this interesting experiment, and he found out what people are worried about. Would you like to know? Okay. He says 40% of the things that we're worried about never happen. They just never happen. 30% have already happened. 12% are needless worries. They're just absolutely pointless worrying about them. 10% are completely unimportant. So then the last 8% that are real, 4% you can't do anything about. So there's only 4% left that you can do something about. And if you can do something about it, you don't need to worry about it. So really, all of the things that we really worry about, we don't need to. But it's keeping us in some kind of a bondage. That worry, that fear raises our blood pressure every day. Makes us tetchy, makes us difficult to be around. We spoke about this a few days ago, that the worry, the fear, the stress actually affects our DNA. It changes the nature of our cells. This is something I always like to say, that fear causes physical and spiritual Alzheimer's. Now, what on earth do I mean by that? Well, we know one of the biggest causes of dementia, and to be honest, today, one of the most fearful diseases that people think about is dementia. It used to be cancer, but dementia now has superseded that. We know that the biggest cause of dementia, or Alzheimer's disease, is going through a prolonged period of stress, especially in middle age. There are lots of other things that can cause it. And in fact, the reason why I colored it brown is because there can be lots of different contributing colors or different diseases that can lead to dementia. Being overweight, diabetes, cancer, all of those things can lead to dementia. But the biggest cause is stress, and prolonged stress during the middle of your life. That's what the evidence tells us. So we have to then learn, how do I deal with fear? And what am I afraid of? And I like this. Fear means false evidence appearing real. The things that we're worried about, actually, we shouldn't really be worried about. It's false. We don't need to worry about it. But the fears that we have are the fears of pain. Nobody wants to have pain, right? But we've already said during the week that sometimes the fear of pain leads to more pain. Unless you deal with that small pain now, it leads to more pain later. Unless you deal with that issue that you have in your relationship, with your colleagues, with your home, with your spouse, unless you deal with it, even though it's a bit painful, it festers and grows and becomes more painful. There is the fear of loss, or fear of being alone, or even the fear of failure. Now, you remember this man, Thomas Edison, right? He came up with the light bulb. Before he came up with the light bulb, before he invented it, it was said that he did thousands of experiments that were failures. And then when asked, you know what, aren't you a little concerned that you've wasted so much time on all of those failures? He said, no, they're not wasted. They just told me that that was the wrong way. That was evidence for me. That allowed me to reach my goal, to make these light bulbs that we're all benefiting from. There is no failure. I like the quote where people say, some you win, some you learn. You don't lose, you just learn. So we shouldn't be afraid of failing. I mean, I've failed loads of exams in my life. I shouldn't really confess this to you. But I've failed loads of exams, but I've learned every step of the way. I've learned why I failed, and that led to success later on. There is a reason why in the Bible it says over 365 times, fear not. It tells us not to fear. The reason why we shouldn't fear is because it takes our mind off of our Creator. We forget what He's done for us in the past. There's the physical Alzheimer's, and then there's the spiritual Alzheimer's. Every time we get a fear facing us, we sometimes tend to forget all the things that He's done for us in the past. It causes spiritual Alzheimer's. And you know what? We're designed to do great things, all of us. God has a great purpose for each and every one of us. But if we're corrupted and held back by fear, we never get to meet our potential. And there are people out there who need your help. They need your help physically, emotionally, financially. People need you. But if we spend all of our time thinking about ourselves and our own fears, we never get to bless anybody. I'll give you a quote from one of my favorite doctors, Dr. Seuss. To the world you may be one person, but to one person you may be the world. If we spend all of our life thinking about our problems, our concerns, our fears, we'll never get to bless people. And you know what? By blessing people, we get blessed too. This is what we're talking about when we talk about lifestyle medicine. It is not all just about eating and drinking. It's about what's going on in our minds, what's going on in our hearts. In actual fact, what's going on in our hearts and minds is actually more important, because that determines what we end up eating and drinking. If you talk to somebody who is an alcoholic or a drug addict or is addicted to certain types of food, you will find that if you search back into their life, there is a problem that they're trying to overcome, that they're trying to replace with food or drink or drugs. The problem is that something that can't cure you can never satisfy you. So they keep searching and searching for more. All right, I'm going to pause it there. If we have any questions, let's take some questions now. No questions. Okay, we can go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll get to you all. Great. I think there's someone at the front here.
How would a condition like fibromyalgia be best reversed or managed with the advice that you can give so far?
Yeah, so fibromyalgia, which affects all the muscles in your body, you feel weak, tired, aching all the time. We believe that fibromyalgia is on the spectrum of autoimmune diseases. So you treat it as though it's an autoimmune disease, okay? So how do you do it? Like in the yellow color, what we do, we try to avoid anything with milk products in it. Make sure you have lots of vitamin D3. We tend to find if you have somebody with fibromyalgia and they're able to go to somewhere quite hot and they can tolerate the heat, most of those symptoms start to go away. But obviously in Britain, it's very difficult to get that. So if you can't get that, then what you should have is lots of vitamin D3, and I usually say 20,000 units per day, vitamin D3, okay? 20,000 units of vitamin D3 every day. To be honest, most of us in this room should be on some kind of vitamin D3 supplement. Living in England, we do need it. It is the only supplement that I recommend. I don't have any shares in it. I don't make any profit from it, but we need it. I take 10,000 every day. I've been doing that for many, many years. Great.
What advice can you give to get rid of belly fat? I mean, I may not be fat all over. I struggle with belly fat.
Yes.
How to get rid of that?
That is a very good, that's a relevant question to all of us, isn't it? Look, I'll be honest with you, I was in Nigeria last month. I try and have a strict diet regime, but I was there for somebody's birthday, and it's a long week of celebrations for the birthday. And I tried to say to them, look, I only eat this time every day. They were having none of it. When I got up, they fed me, and they watched me eat it. I had to eat it. And it was almost, when they cleared the food away, I went outside, they were making the next meal for lunch. And then it was dinner. It was just like, at the end of the week, I mean, I must have put on about 5 or 6 kilos at the end of the week. But getting rid of that belly fat is actually quite difficult. And some people say, well, do you get rid of belly fat by doing lots of sit-ups? That's actually a myth, by the way. Anybody who tells you that, it's a myth. You cannot get rid of fat round here just by concentrating on the muscles here. It doesn't work. Because, all of us have a six-pack. You know that, right? You may not believe it. You may not have seen it for many years. But we all have a six-pack. But the six-pack is just hiding under layers of fat, that's all. And you can't get rid of that belly fat just on its own. You have to get rid of the fat all over your body at the same time. And the best way to do that, well, there are 2 ways. If you want to get rid of it reasonably quickly, I would say, first thing, avoid any sweet drink. Okay, any sweet drink. The reason why I say that is because sugary drinks, they go straight into your system, they raise your insulin levels, and insulin tells your cells to make more fat cells, okay? The next thing is just aerobic exercise every day. Aerobic exercise every day. What I mean by that is just, even if it's just walking, walking, dancing, cycling, swimming. If you have a swimming pool at home, fantastic. But all of that starts to eat away at your fat. And what you must do, you must allow yourself a good space in between your meals. I would say to you, allow yourself to get hungry. I was not able to get hungry in Nigeria, okay? 3 meals a day, and then they stock loads of stuff in my room at night. You know, to be honest, I don't have the greatest willpower when it comes to sweet things. If you stocked it with sweet things at night, I finished it by the morning, okay? I'm confessing to you all, okay? So yeah, give yourself that space of feeling hungry. When you're feeling hungry, when you can feel your stomach really growling, what your body is saying, look, unless you're going to give me some calories, I'm going to start to break down the fat in your body. And that's exactly what you want. And it's a bit uncomfortable. For the first few days, I admit it's uncomfortable. It makes you a bit grouchy as well. But after 3 or 4 days, you get used to it, honestly. So for me, often I will take 2 meals a day, sometimes 1 meal a day, just to allow myself to get a little bit hungry. Wonderful.
Thank you. My grandson is on, well, he's hyperactive, and they've put him on Lenovo. And the other day he read it to say that this tablet caused disease. I was shocked. But I just don't know, we don't know how to get him calm without the tablets. What do you suggest?
No, it's difficult, it's difficult. And we would need to know the reason for the hyperactivity. There are lots of different reasons for hyperactivity. There are some basic ones, which are diet related. So for example, lots of sugar, lots of refined sugar, fine. Lots of additives in food can actually trigger them as well. But we would have to know the reason for the hyperactivity. It's difficult to make any kind of diagnosis. And yeah, you can talk to me after, that's fine.
Going back to the question the lady asked regarding fibromyalgia.
Yes.
How do you work on that with exercise?
Well, because you're in a bit of pain, you don't really want to exercise.
Right.
That's the problem. What I would suggest is that the first thing you do is do the dietary change. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, fibromyalgia is a little bit controversial. It's not 100% sure that it's autoimmune, but it does tend to respond to it. So what I would do is do the diet, avoid the dairy, possibly wheat if you have to, do the high-dose vitamin D3, and then see if you're feeling better. Then if you're feeling a little bit better, I would encourage you to almost push through the pain barrier to do some exercise, because the more you can do, the easier it gets. It's a bit like arthritis. You know, sometimes when we get arthritis, our knees, our hips start to hurt and we just don't want to move. If you don't move, it just gets a lot worse. Okay, so you really have to force yourself to get through it.
Since you can't get vitamin D 20,000 units on the counter, how do you get your doctor to give you that prescription?
Oh no, you can get it over the counter. I mean, I get mine from health food shops.
Really?
Yeah. I can recommend to you, there's one called Liquid Sunshine. I mean, each drop is about 2,500 units, and I recommend the drops rather than the tablets, definitely. Whole Foods does it. I don't think Holland & Barrett does it, actually, but Whole Foods definitely has it. I have no shares in Whole Foods either, by the way, okay, just in case you're thinking. Yes.
Hi there. The myth, if it is, sugar v honey, is there any comparator?
Okay, yeah, sugar v honey. So they're both, I mean, they're both sugar. They are both sweet. So if you are somebody who's trying to lose weight, or if you're a diabetic, or you are a cancer patient, you should try and avoid all of them, okay? Now, honey is better than refined sugar, because it has slightly more nutrients in it. But when it comes to weight loss, cancer, and diabetes, you just treat it, they're all the same. They affect your body all the same. There is another question, though. You may have seen it in the media recently, you know, can we eat loads of fat or should we eat loads of sugar? Have you seen that debate? And actually, you're getting very significantly educated people arguing with each other. Some people saying, you should eat more fat, and others saying, no, you should eat more carbohydrates. You know, the truth is somewhere in between, I have to say. There is no real controversy there. There is no way you can eat loads of fat and lose weight. That's just not possible. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You can't do that. But what happened in the 1970s and 80s is that we realized we were eating too much saturated fat. So the government advice was, get rid of saturated fat, which was actually reasonable advice. But the problem was that all of these foods came out that were just filled with sugar. So people went from saturated fat to refined sugar, and that was terrible. And they also went from saturated fat to trans fat, some of the fats in margarines. Trans fats are much worse than saturated fats. Trans fats are those things that you find in pastries and cakes, and I always say it keeps the shelf life of your cakes incredibly long, but it kind of diminishes our own shelf life. But it's a very interesting point. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Doctor. This question is from someone who's watching you from South Korea.
South Korea?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes. He's saying, some doctors say joking when you have got too much weight is not good. What do you think of that?
Just say that again, sorry.
It says when you have got too much weight, jogging is not good.
Jogging?
Yes.
I thought you said joking. That's
Oh,
right.
joking.
Yeah, joking is always good.
Jogging.
Yeah, jogging is not good. Okay. That's actually quite an interesting point. And what they mean by that is, look, if you've got loads of weight and you try and go jogging, you're putting an awful lot of strain and pressure on your joints. That's what they mean. So you don't have to start by jogging. And I never recommend people to start exercising by going out for a jog. Because what tends to happen, you say, well, I'm going to go for my nice run, I'm going to burn up loads of calories. You come back, you're filled with aches and pains, and you don't want to do it again. The best thing to do is just go for a walk. You know, if you have a lot of weight, even going for a walk, you are burning up lots of calories. Because you take a thin person next to a very overweight person, and they're walking at the same pace, the overweight person is burning more calories because they have more weight. So just start by walking. When you shed some of that weight, you can then start to jog, if you want to. But walking actually is fine.
Dr. Chidi?
Yes.
You said that diabetes can lead to dementia. Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Okay, yes. Good. We know that, in fact, many diseases can lead to dementia. We know that hypertension, diabetes, obesity, those three definitely lead to dementia. And why should it lead to dementia? Well, if you're a diabetic, you may know that your arteries and your blood vessels start to get narrow. So diabetics, they tend to get, what we call paresthesia. They can't feel things that well, and they have bad circulation. Well, if you have bad circulation in your fingers and in your toes, actually it's the same that happens in your brain. So if your arteries are starting to narrow in your brain tissue is not going to get enough oxygen. And that can lead them, in fact, it can predispose them to become what we call, we have these fibrils that tend to form, which is the precursor to Alzheimer's disease. So that's the reason. So hypertension, having strokes. There is a type of dementia called multi-infarct dementia, meaning that you've had lots of tiny infarcts, tiny strokes, and that leads to dementia as well. So anything that affects your vessels will increase your risk of dementia. Great. It's only women asking questions. You haven't seen this. Why is that, I wonder? I don't know.
Yes. What can someone do to reverse the effects of or symptoms of gout, please?
Gout, okay. So gout is where we make lots of uric acid, and sometimes they form crystals in our blood and they can get into our joints. The uric acid, we make uric acid mainly from lots of protein. The more, especially animal protein we have in our diet, so whether it's milk or meat or eggs, the greater your risk of having those crystals formed. So the first thing I would say is make sure you reduce the amount of animal protein in your diet, have lots of fruit and vegetables, lots of water. That definitely helps. Sometimes No, I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there. Definitely reduce the amount of animal protein in your diet. That definitely helps. Yes.
Dr. Chidi, question
a man, yes, great.
Yeah. Say something about bronchitis and asthma, and also something to do with aspirin. You know, aspirin has been in the newspapers left and right. So bronchitis and asthma, is there any way of treating it?
Asthma, well, okay.
And then you will say something about aspirin, please.
Okay. So you want me to do another lecture now, I guess? Is that it? Okay, let me start with asthma. Asthma, what I used to do, when I used to be in the GP surgery, if a mother came with her child who had this semi-diagnosis of asthma, you know, they're starting to wheeze, the first thing I would say to them before we did anything is, look, just go away, remove all the cow's milk, come back to me in 2 months. 50% of them would just improve. So asthma, eczema, those sorts of problems are just a hypersensitivity to cow's milk, really, so you can get rid of it that way. Bronchitis, well, we can get bronchitis from lots of different things. It can be infections, it can be all sorts of reasons. Some of those can't be reversed without things like antibiotics and proper treatment. And what was the other one you were asking me about? Aspirin. Anybody taking aspirin? Anybody? Yeah, the advice has been up and down. Look, no one should take aspirin unless you've had a heart attack. If you're a healthy person and you've not had a problem, you should not be taking aspirin because maybe it will thin my blood and it will reduce my risk of having a heart attack. That is not the right advice. The reason why we say that is because every drug has a side effect. Aspirin has a side effect too. Aspirin can actually raise your blood pressure. It makes your stomach bleed. It makes other vessels bleed. You don't need to take that medication in order to thin your blood. What's the best thing to thin your blood, do you know? Water. Water, absolutely. There is nothing better than water to thin your blood. And some people say, well, I don't like taking water. I say, what? You'd rather take aspirin than drink water? Come on, it doesn't make any sense. Even if you find that's not good enough, as I've said before, onions, garlic, lemon, lime, all of those things will thin your blood much more effectively without any side effects. Great.
Yes, Doctor.
Where are
Chidi.
you? Oh, over there. Okay,
yeah,
great.
I'm here. I have fear of eating the so-called greens, blues, reds, and whatnots.
Oh, right.
Because by the time it comes to my bowl, it takes some time before it comes. And by the time it comes, it's been washed. It looks fresh, but they are not fresh because they have been polluted.
Oh, I see.
With fertilizers, preservations, and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So what do? They are all poisoned before I get those fruits.
Okay, that's a very optimistic view, but let me answer it because it's a real concern. You know, sometimes, you know, when you have people like me coming and talking about health, what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat, you can leave thinking, what on earth can I eat? Because, yes, you're right, there are pesticides being used, there are other chemicals being used. But if we worry too much, we will end up not eating anything. So if you don't eat the fruits and the vegetables, what do you eat? Do you eat the bread? Do you eat the meat? Well, the meat comes from animals that have been eating those plants anyway. And when the animals eat those plants, they concentrate those chemicals up to 1,000 times. So no matter what, you're always better off eating the fruit, eating the vegetables. You know what? When you see the food in front of you, we pray about it, give God thanks for it, and eat it. But we can't be worried about everything. I mean, you said you actually said you had a fear. You know, we've just been talking about fear. Don't be afraid of food. Don't be afraid of food. Yes. Oh, grow your own, yes.
Hello, doctor. A lot of men have a fear about prostate cancer. And I wanted to find out how often, as men, should we go in to be checked for prostate cancer, and is there some method we should follow? And secondly, I would like to find out whether oxybutynin is the only solution to an enlarged prostate?
Okay, yes, that's a big fear for men. When I talk to most men, the biggest fear is being examined for a prostate. Okay? Oh, I don't want to get my prostate checked. I don't want anybody to stick their finger up my back passage. Yes, I can understand that. I can understand that. But let me put it this way. We should only really be getting regularly screened if you have any kind of symptom of prostate. Now, what do I mean by that? If you're finding it difficult to pass urine, or if there's a bit of a delay, if you find any blood in your urine. If you have blood in your urine, especially if it's not painful, if it's painless blood in your urine, this is men or women, you must treat that as an emergency. You can't wait for several weeks to see a doctor. That is an emergency, and you must treat it as though it is cancer until they tell you otherwise. So yes, when you have symptoms like that, you must see your doctor urgently. But for most of us, I know they say once you're over 40, you should be screened regularly. There is a slight problem with that. The problem is that the tests we do for the prostate, even the blood tests, are not that specific. So what that means is if I, who have no symptoms, I go to my doctor, I get a prostate exam, if you do 10,000 people, probably around about 200 to 400 men will be falsely diagnosed as having a problem, but they'll be 100% healthy. So then they'll go through a lot of treatment, a lot of investigations when they have no problem. So that provides a bit of a controversy. But we know that if you test 10,000 men, you will save at least one life. So that's the dilemma. So people will say, well, should I go and get tested or not? So what we tend to say is, if you have any kind of symptom, or you have any kind of family history with prostate problems, go and get tested regularly. If you have no symptoms, you don't need to get tested as regularly. Now, I spoke a little bit about the fact that even if you had an early diagnosis of prostate cancer, you could actually reverse it. Well, let's say this. You can definitely prevent prostate cancer by eating the right food. The things that promote prostate cancer are lots of meat, lots of dairy, lots of fat, and then inactivity. If you're getting lots of fruit and vegetables and you're being active every day and you have no symptoms, you are lowering your risk every day of getting prostate cancer. There is also this other thing that even if you have been diagnosed with prostate cancer, the majority of them, not all, but the majority of them, grow very slowly. So your doctor will tell you that, you know what, even if you have that prostate cancer, it will take it 200 to 300 years to kill you. So obviously it's not a big problem. And what we're finding out now is that there are lots of research being done where we can start to differentiate whether it's an aggressive prostate cancer that could kill you, or if it's one that's mild, you can just leave it alone and just watch it. But it's a very important thing. But if you have any kind of symptom, you should get screened and tested.
Okay. Dr. Chidi, I just want to ask two questions. One, hay fever is a rampant thing at this moment. What can you do to reduce the symptoms of itching and so on? What food can you use? And secondly, what foods could you eat? Or what things can you do to keep your arteries open?
Okay, good. So for hay fever, I think most people who suffer from hay fever, if they go to a different country, like a rural country, Africa, Asia, they don't get the same hay fever as when they come here. So some people will say, well, is it the pollution or the type of plants that we have? Yes, that is true. But the reason why we get hay fever is because our immune system is hypersensitive. So our immune system, we talk about those antibodies and all those cells that respond to invaders. Somebody who has hay fever has a higher level of defense than the normal people, than most of us. Why does that happen? Usually, and not all the time, but usually it happens because of something that we eat or something that we take in that triggers that system. So our immune system is constantly set at a higher level. It may sound like I'm always talking about milk. Milk is the big one, right? If you can eliminate cow's milk, anything with cow's milk in it, that usually sorts out a lot of people's hay fever. So it's getting to the root cause. And what can you take to keep your arteries open? The best food that we know of to keep your arteries open naturally are green leafy vegetables. Green leafy vegetables contain nitric oxide. Nitric oxide opens up the arteries. Nitric oxide is the main component of Viagra, right? You're all acting like you don't know what Viagra is. Okay, we know what Viagra is. So nitric oxide is the chemical that opens up the arteries. So dark green leafy vegetables will actually do that naturally for you. Anything else? I mean, there are other things like capsaicin in chili peppers. That does it, but you don't want to be eating chilies all your life. You can't do that. Okay. Yes.
Hello, Dr. Chidi.
Hello.
My question is this: if you're prone to cavities, is it possible to remineralize your teeth through diet, instead of having your teeth filled in or pulled out?
If you have cavities, can you remineralize your teeth?
Yes.
With diet?
Yes.
No. No, you can't. Sorry.
Okay.
You have to go to the dentist. I'm sorry about that.
Dr. Chidi, I have 2 questions. First one, is there a way that we can use food to reduce our fibroids for West Indian African women? Okay. And secondly, as a vegetarian, lots of us want meat alternatives and are using a lot of soya.
Sure.
Is this a good idea? Should we avoid soya at all cost?
Right, okay. So the fibroids issue is a big one. It's interesting because I looked up some of the fibroid experts of the world, the world-leading fibroid experts. If you look them up, they are experts at removing fibroids. So they're surgeons. But there are very few people who can prevent you getting fibroids. There are very few people who can reduce fibroids. You know what? Fibroids can be shrunk with your diet. They can be. They can be, absolutely. And I've seen it happen. Now, the reason why the reason why you get fibroids is because, well, you know what they are, right? They're called tumors, but they're not cancerous. They are tumors of muscle on the womb. They can be outside, inside, or within. The reason why they grow abnormally is because there is something triggering their growth. There are 2 main things that will trigger the growth of fibroids. I'm sorry to say this, the first one is stress, right? And I can see people thinking, yeah, you know what, I've got a stressful life. And stress does it because when you're stressed, you're releasing those hormones, cortisol, which programs cells to grow more, and those fibroids are sensitive to cortisol. So the first thing you have to do is try and manage your stress. Exercise is one way to do it, absolutely. Also, the next thing is it's not an autoimmune problem at all. It's not an autoimmune problem. But if you treat it like an autoimmune problem, exactly the same way, high-dose vitamin D3, avoiding milk because milk contains lots of estrogen. Estrogen causes fibroids to grow. Having lots of green leafy vegetables, that is a way that can actually shrink your fibroids. Most fibroids can be shrunk. Even when they're quite big, they can still be shrunk unless they become calcified. And just let me say this, if any of you have to have surgery for fibroids, if your surgeon tells you that we have to open you up this way, just please go to another surgeon. It doesn't matter how big your fibroid is, the maximum that the surgeon should be able to do is just to do that panty line, C-section line. No one should be opened up like this. Most fibroids can be removed, and these are the ones that are not responding to diet. Most fibroids can actually be removed with keyhole surgery. Now you might say, well, what if your fibroid's that big? How can it be removed with keyhole surgery? Well, they have something called a morcellator. They've revised it now, but can go in, break it down, and pull it out just through keyhole surgery. Okay. And you were talking about soya products as well. Soya's okay. I mean, I hear lots of controversy about soya. Some of the meat-like soya products, they have lots of fat in them, they have lots of salt in them, and some of them are actually a little bit refined as well. Yeah, I wouldn't take a lot of it, but the actual soya itself is okay. Some people think it causes cancer. It doesn't cause cancer. It actually protects from cancer. But keep it as natural as possible. Okay, so we'll take two more, shall we? Two more.
Hi, Dr. Chidi. Couple of questions for me. It's about the health concerns for women. One is the breast cancer and also the cervical smear that women are expected to do ever so often throughout the period of time, 3 years or so on. What advice would you be giving to women having to go and have these examinations, which I think are very uncomfortable?
They are uncomfortable.
Very discomforting.
Yeah. You know, it's amazing how all of these screening processes for men and women are uncomfortable. So, you know, it puts you off just thinking about it. We haven't come up with anything that's slightly easier. But I have to say, cervical screening, we have to do it. I'm sorry, you have to do it. Okay? You do have to do it. Because the reason why I say that is because it is one of the easiest, most preventable cancers. Cervical cancer, you can pick it up very early. You pick up some change cells very early, and it's treated 100%. I have seen people who have avoided having cervical screening who have unnecessarily got cervical and uterine cancer. You know, so I can't emphasize that enough. You do need to get screened. When it comes to breast screening, it's a bit like the idea for prostate screening. You know, we can, I keep saying we. You can screen yourselves. You can examine your own breasts every month. You get an idea of what your breasts feel like every month. That is good. When you notice any kind of difference, absolutely any kind of difference, you go to your doctor, okay? And I can't emphasize that enough either. Once you discover something, don't keep it to yourself. Go to your doctor. Don't be put off by, oh, it may be a little bit painful. It is vital that you go to your doctor as early as possible. Was there another question?
Yes.
That's it, isn't it?
No, Dr. Chu, what causes a person to be cold all the time? Her body is always cold.
Well, if you're cold all the time, I mean, you've checked your central heating, everything's okay. I don't know. Sometimes, but seriously, sometimes it can be a hormonal problem, like your thyroid gland. That could be, you could be hypo or hypothyroid. But you know, no, I don't know. You tend to find with married couples, you know, the woman feels cold most of the time and the man feels hot. So, you know, there's this debate about the thermostat, which causes lots of marital problems, but we won't go into that right now. I think that was the last question, wasn't it? I think it was. I think we're just about out of time. Okay, everybody's pointing at you, so yes. Let's get this one. Or do you want it? You can shout it out. Oh, no, you've got it.
Thank you. Dr. Chidi, my question is based on sleep.
Sleep?
Yes, because it appears that some people can survive on less hours of sleep. Like Mrs. Thatcher, we used to hear that.
Yes.
She could only sleep 4 hours. And what should you not do or do to promote sleep before you go to bed?
That's a very good question. Yes, we all hear that Mrs. Thatcher could survive on 3 hours sleep, right? We've all heard that. But I tell you this, nobody can survive on 3 hours sleep. It will take a toll on your body. You might think, oh yeah, you know, I can work all day, I can be up all night, and I can just take 2-3 hours of sleep and I can function the next day. Do you know how Margaret Thatcher died? She had dementia, right? Right, because it's one of the functions of stress during your life. You're not sleeping enough. Ronald Reagan had dementia as well, right? So those very high-powered jobs where people are not sleeping enough, it leads to a problem long-term down the line. So the things you must do, or if you're finding it difficult to sleep, I would first of all say, why are you finding it difficult to sleep? Is it because you're stressed? Is it because you can't go to sleep, or you go to sleep and wake up very early? If you go to sleep and you're waking up early in the morning, I would always think about, well, are you depressed about anything? Is there anything really concerning you? So for that, I would ask you to really seriously go and see your doctor, because there may be something else going on. Try and make sure we have these screens all over the place, computer, TV, iPads, iPhones. what we should try to do is just put them away a couple of hours before you go to bed. Give yourself some time to relax. Make sure you're in a place which is dark and quiet and calm. Just those simple things that allows you to sleep. But if you're finding it very difficult to sleep, I would think about, am I stressed about anything? Am I depressed about anything? I need to see my doctor. Okay, but that's a good one to end on. Thank you very much. We will see you all again next year.